Hey everybody, it's Tony from Adafruit, and happy Arduino Day. So it's the 2nd of April, it's Arduino Day, it's a good day to celebrate Arduino. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to just do a little stream to build a breadboard Arduino. So take all the components that make up an Arduino Uno and put them on a breadboard and assemble it, and just kind of show you how to get your feet wet with kind of embedded programming development, basic breadboardings of circuits. So let's just kind of dive in there and see what we need to do here. So let me pull up the Workbench shot, and I'll show you what I've got here. So this is just my Workbench over here, and it's actually pretty easy to build a little breadboard Arduino, so you don't need a ton of parts. The big thing that you need is this thing right here. Oh, actually, this is kind of weird. My video is not updating. Uh-oh, I have to troubleshoot Wirecast in real time here. Let me change the source settings real fast for this camera and see if we can get this thing to work. Let's try this. Uh-oh. Let me create a new Workbench shot, and let's see if we can get this camera to work. With what works. So, all right, let's go back to the main shot. And so I've only got this camera right here. So what we will do is we will rotate it down on the desk like that. Look at that, improvising. So, okay, so we'll make this work. And let me pull over all the parts over here that we need for this. So basically you need the ATmega 328P. So this is the chip that the Arduino uses. And let me grab a few more components over here that I've got. So just a few extra things. And it's only a handful of components that you'll need to build an Arduino. And then let me grab this. So you'll actually need another Arduino here. So I have an Uno right here. This is the Arduino Uno. And let's see, let me see if I can get a little more light real quick on this. There we go. Alright, I think that'll work. So, okay, so the components that we need, let me see if I can rotate this camera a little bit more straight. That's good enough. Okay, so the components that we need then, so you need the ATmega 328P. So this is just a little microcontroller from Atmel. So it's basically the brains of the Arduino Uno. So this guy right here, the Uno, and you can actually see there's the chip right there. It's the DIP package, so it fits right onto the board there. And in addition to that, so you'll need a few other things. You'll need this is the 10K resistor. This will pull up the reset line. So the reset line, normally it's pulled up to a high voltage level, like 5 volts, and then you pull it down low to tell the chip, okay, I'm ready to start programming. You'll also need, this is a 16 megahertz crystal, so tiny little crystal thing. See if we can kind of zoom in there. That probably autofocus won't work on this, but little crystal. And then you also need some small little decoupling capacitors. This is ceramic capacitors. These are 22 picofarad capacitors, so you need 2 of those. And then you also need, this is a 100 nanofarad electrolytic capacitor. This is used, so the way I'm going to program the chip is with a little FTDI cable, but you'll need to use a little capacitor on the reset line of the FTDI cable to just keep the signal low. It kind of slows the signal down a little bit. And then in addition, I'm going to add an LED, so a big red LED, and a little resistor. This is a 560 ohm resistor, but you could use almost any resistor, like something from like 200 ohms to like a kilo ohm or so, to just limit the current through the LED. Then a bunch of wires and a breadboard, obviously. So I've already put the chip on the breadboard here. Now let me switch real quick to the desktop view, and we'll see if we can kind of make this work just with this one camera. So we'll go here and we'll go there, and let's see. Okay, so on the left here then I have this is basically just a web browser, and there are a couple good guides on how to build a breadboard Arduino, and I'll link to both of these in the description when this goes up on YouTube. But basically There's one guide, which is kind of the classic guide from David Mellis, which just walks through all of the different components, how to build it on a breadboard. Real nice little guide, very detailed, and shows you like how to add a little linear regulator, like a 7805 for a 5-volt power supply. So that's a good option to look at. There's another little guide too that I'm going to look at. This is more specific to using an Arduino like the ATmega 328P to program the raw chip, because the one problem is you have your raw ATmega 328P, and you get this from from someone that chips it out, and it's not going to be programmed with anything by default. And so Arduino needs a bootloader program to it. So that's just code that tells it how to load a sketch over the serial port, how to start running it, that type of stuff. So to do that initial bootstrapping, you need something to program the Arduino. And it's actually easy. You can take an existing Arduino and use it as a programmer. It's called ICSP, in-circuit serial programming. So you can just connect a few lines between the Arduino and your ATmega chip, and then it can just directly program the bootloader onto it. Then once you have the bootloader onto your raw chip, then it's pretty much like a normal Arduino where you can upload over the serial port and make things work, just like you would with the normal Uno in this case. So I'll use kind of a combination of both these guides to set this up. So maybe, let's see, I'll start with kind of this main guide here that talks about what circuitry we need. Now to power this, I'm using, this is the 5-volt FTDI cable that I'm going to use for this. So this actually gives me a 5-volt output and a ground connection, so I can just power my Arduino directly from this 5-volt cable. So I'm not going to worry about setting up a voltage regulator like a 7805. The voltage regulator is nice in that you could plug in any like 7 to 12 volt power supply and it'll regulate it down to the 5 volts that the Arduino needs. But if I'm using a cable that gives me 5 volts, it's easy. I don't need to have that regulator. And I can also use the Uno itself, so it has a 5-volt output that I can use to power this. So, any way to get a good 5-volt output is all that you need in this case. And then the guide kind of walks through how to start connecting the chip. So one big thing it mentions is the pinout, and so this kind of links to, here's each of the pins on the chip, and so here's looking at the chip. And one super important thing that's really easy for maybe a beginner to mess up, and let me see if we can kind of, you might not be able to tell with the lighting, unfortunately, because my Workbench camera just died. You can't really see it too well. But there's a little dot in the corner up here, and so you want to look where that dot is. And there's also a notch at the top here, like a kind of a half circular notch. And so that dot says this is pin 1, the very first pin on the chip, and everything else is kind of relative to that. So you want to make sure that you get the orientation correct. And so you can see this matches up right here, like this is the PC6 or the reset line it shows right here. So very, very critical to get that right, because if you get it wrong, nothing's going to work. You're going to have things connected the wrong way. Okay, so let's go in and let's just start wiring this up. So it's pretty straightforward. Basically, you need to connect a 10K resistor, or it could be almost any value. I mean, you can go like 100K. I've even done like a mega ohm or so. But you need a resistor to pull up the reset line. So that's the first pin here. I'm just going to connect that to the red rail, which is going to be my 5-volt power rail on here. So that's just going to normally hold that reset line up at a high level, the 5-volt level there. And then let's see, the next thing it has, so it kind of shows you how to connect the power and the ground inputs to the Arduino. So let's go down and we'll just make sure we get these all correct. So I need to go, let's see, from the bottom up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 up from the bottom and connect to ground. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so this goes to ground. And I'm just going to connect this to the blue power rail here. So that'll be my ground connection. Let's see, let me see if I can move this more kind of in the center there so you can see it. Okay, and then right next to that, right above it, is a power connection. So we go up and connect that to the power rail there. And then on the other side, there's a ground connection immediately opposite this power connection. So we'll go there. And then right below that, I have 2 power connections, and this kind of explains, what some of these are. So, one of these is the main voltage input that kind of powers the chip. Another one is the analog reference voltage. So this is if you're using the analog to digital converter, it needs a level to know that this is kind of your max level for your ADC. So let's connect both of these up to power. So connect that to power, and I'll connect the one right below it to power. So okay, so those are all connected. And now before I forget, let me grab another wire and let's connect up both of the power rails on here. So let's go from red to red on each side, just so that I can input power on either side, and it's going to make sure that it goes to both sides. And then also connect the ground. So do the blue rail to the blue rail on the outer edges here. So okay, so we've got that. So we've got kind of the basics of the chip. Now the next thing is the crystal, and so this is what kind of drives the clock on the chip. It's super important. You have to have some clock source. Now, the ATmega 328P, it can actually use an internal 8 megahertz oscillator, but I'm going to use the external chip here, or the external crystal, just because it's a little more accurate and it's truer to what the real Arduinos have. So like the Uno, you can actually see, if I raise it up here, this little thing right here, that's the crystal. So that's the 16 megahertz crystal. And so I'm just going to plug in a crystal. And you do kind of want to get this as close as you can to the inputs on the chip. Like, you don't want to have long wires going away, because that could introduce some noise into the signal path. So keep it as close as you can. Now this gets connected, and this tutorial, it's a little hard to see. I like the other one over here that kind of shows you a little more directly. Now this one actually has long wires going to the crystal, which you probably don't want to do, but you just need to connect to both of these pins that are right below this ground connection that I added here. So the next two pins I need to have my crystal connected to. So I'm going to connect the crystal there, and I'm really going to get it close to the Arduino, as close as I can, like that. And then also with the crystal, you want to use these little decoupling capacitors. So these just ensure that you don't get a lot of noise into the signal. So these connect from the crystal lines down to ground. So let's connect one of these over here onto this line. Oop, almost have it in there. Sometimes the breadboard's a little bit annoying to get things to stick in. There we go. So that, and then get that into the ground line. So okay, so there are my two little capacitors there. So now we're pretty close. I think we almost have everything set up. So let's kind of keep going through here and see what else we need. Let's see, this talks about, okay, now we want to add an LED to our Arduino here. So this is kind of like on the Uno, pin 13 has a little LED connected to it, this tiny little surface mount thing. So I want to emulate that, because the Blink sketch by default uses pin 13. So that's what I'll use here. So I'm going to connect this. So they show in the diagram right here, here's the LED, and it looks like pin 13 is right below these two power lines that I added over here. So let's connect. You want to use the longer leg of the LED, the anode, that's the positive line. So connect the longer leg to this, and then the shorter leg I'm just going to put onto a free row on the breadboard down here. And then I want to connect a resistor, so I'm using a 560 ohm resistor from the shorter leg of the LED, the cathode, that's the negative side, down to ground. So this just limits the current through the LED so that you don't burn it out. So okay, so the LED is connected there. So that's looking good. Now let's see. Now this guide, it kind of walks through how to connect up to the serial cable so that you can start programming the chip. But because I don't have a bootloader on here yet, I want to skip ahead to programming the bootloader on this breadboard Arduino. So I'm going to jump to the second tutorial here. This that's specific to using an Arduino to do that bootloader process. So this kind of shows the same exact breadboard setup that I just created here, and then the big change is that now I need to add some connections between my Arduino Uno and my breadboard Arduino here. So let's do that. So the first one is this green wire here. So this goes to the reset line. That's going to be pin 10 on the Uno. It's going to connect to the reset line right here on the breadboard Arduino. So let's make that connection. So we'll go to 10, And then, let's see, we'll move these things a little bit closer to each other, like that. So then the Arduino can pull the reset line low and tell the chip to go into a kind of a programming ready state. So, okay, so now let's grab these 3 yellow wires. So the 3 yellow wires here, these are actually connected to the hardware SPI bus on the Arduino, and it's going to connect to the ICSP, the in-circuit serial programming pins on the ATmega chip, and it's a SPI-like protocol. It's real similar. It's a serial protocol. So then the Uno can basically just program the chip directly when I make those connections. So I want to connect this. Let's see, pin 11 gets connected to, or actually let's start up with pin 13. So pin 13 gets connected to the same pin that the LED was connected to. And then pin 12 gets connected to the one below that. And then pin 11 gets connected to the one below that one. So, okay, so I've got the ICSP connections in there. So that should be all that I need to have the Uno talk to the breadboard Arduino and program it. So let's give it a shot. I'll show you what you need to do. And luckily, you can do all of this in the Arduino IDE. So they've made it really simple. You can program the bootloader directly. So you want to load up the Arduino IDE. And then what you want to do, so you want to choose for the board. So the first thing I need to do is program my Uno to act as an in-circuit serial programmer for the breadboard Arduino. So I'm not going to touch the breadboard Arduino yet. First, I'm just going to program the Uno. So I want to make sure that I select the Arduino Uno board in the board manager. And then I'm going to plug in the Uno so that it's connected to my computer. So, okay, so the Uno is plugged in now. And I'm going to select its serial port. So we'll give it a second here to show up. So there it is. So yeah, this USB modem. And this is the Mac I'm using, but you can do this on Windows or any other device. And now, okay, so I've got Uno, I've got my device selected. Now I want to load up the sketch. So it's under the examples and it's called Arduino ISP. So I want to load this up and I want to basically just load this onto the Arduino. So I'm just going to hit upload and this will compile it and it's going to upload and program the Arduino Uno over here to act as the serial programmer. So okay, so that's done uploading. So now my Uno is a serial programmer. So I'm going to close this sketch out. And now what I want to do is burn a bootloader to my breadboard Arduino here. And so I'm going to use the Arduino Uno that I just programmed as an ICSP programmer to do that. So what I want to do, I want to select, now the board type, I'm going to change this to the Arduino Due Millenove. I think it means 2009, which I'm guessing is probably like the year that that Arduino came out. This is just like a simpler, this is kind of an earlier version of the Arduino Uno, so it's got a little bit simpler bootloader. So I want to select that board as the one, that's the board that I'm going to basically flash my breadboard Arduino to act as. And then the processor type, so the Due Millenove, it had 2 different processors, the 168 or the 328. In this case, I'm using the 328, so I'll make sure I select that. The port actually, I want to make sure that I have the Arduino Uno that I'm talking to, that's the actual serial programmer selected. So I've got that. Now the programmer, I want to go down and make sure I have Arduino as ISP selected. Not the Arduino ISP, but Arduino as ISP option selected. So that's selected. And then I just want to click this Burn Bootloader button. So it doesn't matter what sketch I have selected here. The Burn Bootloader is actually going to go, and Arduino has pre-compiled bootloaders for all of the different boards internally. And so this is just going to burn one of those bootloaders. So let's just click this. And it takes a second. Uh-oh, it looks like it got some kind of an error here. So let's see. Error while burning bootloader. Let's see. So, okay, so I must have done something wrong with this. So let's just double check all the connections and things here are good. So let's see. I've got, just troubleshoot. So I've got power to power and ground to ground there. So that looks good. And then the reset line, let's see, that's pulled up to power. Oh, it wasn't connected very well. So let's pull that back down. Now reset I have connected to 10. Let me make sure I've got that correct on here. So that's going to number 10. Yeah, that looks good. Now number let's see, number 13 goes down to, let's count across here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all right, so 5 pins from the bottom here. I should have number 13. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's number 5. And that's going to, okay, number 13. And then number 12 is right next to that. So make sure I've got a good connection to that. So yeah, that looks good. And then number 11 is right below that. So I've got a good connection there. So okay, so that looks good. Then let's see. Let me make sure that I have all of the power and the ground connections correct for the chip. So let's see, the power connection, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 from the top there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, that looks good. And then the ground is right next to that, so that looks okay. And then the crystal is right next to that, so I have, yep, both of the leads for the crystal there. That looks okay. And then the capacitors, those just go down to ground, so that looks okay. Make sure those are connected. That looks okay. Okay, I think the wiring looks okay. I'm gonna, maybe let's pull the LED out also just for now, just to keep it out of the way there. So okay, so let me go back and let's make sure that I got the Arduino ISP example burned. So let's load this back up. And let's see, let's select the Uno. And I've got the USB device. And just to make sure, I'm going to unplug it and replug it in. It's also kind of fun when you're using OS X El Capitan. It's got all kinds of little USB issues, so might run into some fun stuff here with that. Okay, so that looks good. So let's burn our Uno here with the bootloader again, and let's make sure this works. So, okay, so the Uno is burned. Now I'm going to just disconnect it and reconnect it just to make sure it's reset. Now, okay, so let's go back here and let's select, I want the Arduino Due, okay, so yeah, I want the Due Millenova, and then I want the 328, and then the port here, yep, that's the Arduino Uno, and then I want Arduino as ISP. So okay, so let's try this and let's just make sure this is really selected. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's do the burn bootloader, and we should get this thing to burn the bootloader. Huh, that is very interesting that it's not burning the bootloader. So let's see. Let's see if we can debug this a little bit more. It's funny because I just did this, and of course now you change everything up, and you know I must have gotten something wrong on here. But let's see. Okay, so it's telling me it doesn't know the voltage, but that's okay. I mean, it's not actually able to measure that from the Arduino Uno, but it's telling me that it can't tell the device signature. Huh, that is a little weird. I don't know if I've wired something incorrectly, but let's just try and see if I'm going to disconnect the Uno. Let's see if I can program this chip, because maybe it burned it, but it couldn't actually finish the verification here. Like it's, well, no, it's just trying to read the info, but it can't talk to it. So, something's a little bit off here. So, obviously, I've done something wrong here, and I don't want to spend too much more time in the stream just trying to troubleshoot it. So let's just kind of move on, and I'll connect up the serial cable, because this chip has already been flashed since I just programmed it right before I started this stream. So it should actually take the commands, but you know, we can see if maybe something was a little messed up before. So okay, so to connect up the FTDI cable, this is just a serial cable. So I want to use the orange pin, which is the transmit from the cable, and I want to connect this to the receive pin, and that's actually pin 2. It's right below the reset line on the 328. And then I want to connect up the yellow connection, and that's the receive pin on the 328, or on the FTDI cable here. So, and the yellow goes right below the orange, so that's pin number 3, and we connect that up. Now the green one, I actually need to connect this little 100 nanofarad capacitor, and so this just kind of slows down the reset signal, because the FTDI cable, it's going to pull down, it's the DTR, or the I think it's the RTS line, it's the green line on the cable. You know, it's going to pull that down, and normally it pulls it down and it's too fast for the chip to recognize it. So this kind of slows that down a little bit. Now this is a kind of chip or a component where you need to worry about the orientation. So there's a little stripe right here, which is the negative, the cathode. So you want to connect the cathode to the reset line, and then the anode, the other leg, just out to a free row. And then I'm going to connect this green wire there, and then connect that up to the green wire on the FTDI cable. So we connect that up, and then power and ground. Oh, duh! I just realized why I couldn't program the chip before. So this is a stupid beginner mistake here. But hey, everyone makes these kind of mistakes, even non-beginners like me. So I'm gonna pull. We're gonna go back. I didn't have the power connected, so people watching this are probably screaming at me. Well, where's your power connection? So duh, obviously. So I need to connect up the 5-volt power rail to the 5-volt on my Arduino Uno, and then connect up the ground. So ground to ground. All right, now let's redo all those connections I did before. So we're getting a little bit of a tour of that's the very first thing to try when you're troubleshooting is to check your power, and you could tell when I first started to troubleshoot, I checked my breadboard power to see do I have power and ground. But I completely glossed over that, oh, duh, I didn't have the Arduino connected to power. So, good instinct on my part, but I should have gone a little bit further on that. So, okay, so let's connect back up. So the reset line goes to pin 10 on the Arduino. And then let's see, pin 13, this guy here, goes to the line that's right below the last power line. I'm just following this schematic right here exactly. So then the next line is pin 12. Then the next line is pin 11. And we'll put the LED back on. So the longer leg, the anode, that connects to where pin 13 is connected. And then the cathode just goes down to a free row. And then the little resistor that limits the current for the LED, we're going to connect that up to ground. So just connect that to the shorter leg of the LED. Oh, come on, get in there. All right, cool. I think that's connected. Okay, so now let's go back to the Arduino IDE and let's retry the bootloader. So the Due Millenove AT3 Mega 328, the port for my Arduino Uno there, and then Arduino is ISP selected. Now let's do burn bootloader, and now you can see things are actually happening. Like it's flashing. We're reading the chip. We're writing the chip. And there we go, verify success. So, okay, simple. I'd like to say that I planned it that way, but unfortunately no. But hey, it's good to go through that kind of troubleshooting. Now you can see by default their bootloader, it looks like it flashes the LED. I think it's programmed with a sketch that basically does the blink in this case. But okay, so now let's connect up our serial cable and program the breadboard Arduino alone by itself. So let's disconnect the Uno. So I'm just going to pull off the power and the ground connections. And let's just pull out all of these serial connections. Now this reset line I'm going to keep. So okay, so we're done with the Uno. Let's move that out of the way. So this chip, it's been programmed with the bootloader. It's ready to act like an Arduino. So now, like I was saying, let's go back and to connect up the FTDI cable. So we'll start with the reset line. And like I said before, I need a little capacitor to slow down that signal. And I want to take the side with the stripe, which basically that's the negative line, that's the cathode, and I want to connect that to the reset line, the very first pin, and then the anode, the other line, just goes to a free row, and I connect my green wire there, and I connect that to the green wire on my FTDI cable. Then I want to connect up the orange wire, which is the transmit from the FTDI cable to the receive, which is the second pin on the Arduino. And actually the tutorial, the first tutorial for the breadboard Arduino kind of shows in this picture here. So here's the transmit line from the FTDI going to the receive, and the receive line from the FTDI going to the transmit from the Arduino. And so that's the yellow cable that I'll connect. So I connect yellow up to yellow on the FTDI cable and connect that to pin 3. Okay, and now then the power. So I want to go ground to the black on the cable, and then power 5 volts, I want to go to red on the FTDI cable. So there's a brown wire that's unused. It's like, I think it's the clear to send line. So, okay, so yep, just make sure all these components are in a good spot. And let's plug the cable in. Okay, so now let's go back to the Arduino IDE and let's load up a Blink sketch, just a basic, simple example. Now let's select, so I need to have the Due Millenove selected as my board because that's the firmware that I flashed to it. It's the 328. Now the port, I want to pick the USB serial port for my FTDI cable here. So I'll pick that. And then the code for this you can look at. It's just going to blink pin 13, which is the LED right here. So right now this is blinking for like, it looks like maybe a quarter of a second or so. But this sketch is actually going to have it do a slower blink. And actually, just to make it really obvious, let's change our delay so it'll hold the line, it'll hold the LED on for 2 seconds and then off for 1 second. So let's just change that to a delay of 2 seconds. So okay, so let's hit upload and let's see what happens here. So it's going to compile this sketch, and then now you can see some things are kind of happening, some things are flashing, and it's done. And look at that. So the LED it's on for 2 seconds, off for 1, on for 2. And it looks like it's working. So we've built a little breadboard Arduino basically. This is the genesis, the very first Arduino was probably built as a breadboard like this. So kind of cool that you can do this. You just need the chip, a little crystal, a few capacitors, some wires, a pull-up resistor for the reset line. And you might be wondering like, okay, why would I do this? Because I've got an Arduino Uno right here. This is way easier to use as far as you just plug and play and go for it. And it's not necessarily better or worse in any way. It's good to know how to do this. So, the Uno is built. It has all kinds of components on here. It has LEDs for like pin 13. There's a power LED and things like that. And maybe you're building a device where you don't want all those components. The Uno has a little power regulator here, so that it can take in like 7 to 12 volts of power and run off of that. But maybe you don't need those parts, or you need an Arduino in a smaller kind of package. That's why you might want to build your own Arduino like this. It's good to have that flexibility that you can do this. Or maybe you want to play with a different chip. So there are all kinds of chips that Atmel makes. Things like the larger chips like that the Mega 256 uses. You could use one of those, hook them up on a breadboard. They don't wire up in exactly the same way, but you can look at the data sheet and kind of see, okay, here are the basic connections that I need to make, and see how to work with a chip like that. So just to make sure things are working again, let's upload another sketch. Let's look at like maybe there's like a serial example that we can use, something, or how about we can even just add it to the sketch here. So let's do like a serial begin at the top here. We'll do it like 9600 baud, and let's just do like a serial.println hello world, and then every time it loops, let's have it print a message out. So okay, so let's upload this, and then I should be able to look at the serial monitor and see some output here. So just really showing that this is running off of this Arduino, and we're able to see data. So let's open the serial monitor, and it's at a little bit high baud rate, so let's do 9600 baud. And we should see every time it loops, yep, there it is, hello world. So it's acting just like a normal Arduino. It's running the loop every couple seconds or so, flashing LED. So that's it. That's kind of the basics of how to breadboard an Arduino. So had a little bit of fun here, unfortunately, with the camera dying at the last minute. So let me just kind of move it back into place here. So that's it. So I just wanted to do a quick little demo to celebrate Arduino Day. I figured a good way to do it is to build a breadboard Arduino and show you some of the basics there. So subscribe to Adafruit's YouTube channel. You can watch this video and all kinds of other fun projects. Thanks a lot for watching. So I'll see everyone on Monday. I'm going to do another Raspberry Pi stream. So until then, it's Tony from Adafruit, and happy Arduino Day.